Today we'll be going over the top do's and don'ts for your Walt Disney World trip. Hello and welcome to the Let's Go to Disney podcast. I'm Oliver.
And I'm Lucy.
Today is Sunday, March 10th, and you're listening to episode 26, Walt Disney World Do's and Don'ts. Before we get into today's main topic, here's what's going on in the parks right now. The My Disney Experience app got a significant look change this week. The big tiles that used to have the vast majority of your menus has been reduced to 6, and the rest are now stacked on top of each other underneath these main 6 menu tiles. Different categories have been added to add some organization to the app. We don't hate the changes, but like anything else, it's significant enough that it will take some getting used to.
I agree. It's not my favorite, but we'll figure it out. We'll get used to it.
Like anything else, it'll take some time. They also announced a significant change coming to the advanced dining reservation system. So of note, you'll be able to see reservations for restaurants for multiple days at a time, up to 10, versus the current 1 day at a time. This should make it easier to plan dining for your trip, as you won't have to check for multiple days to see which day you can snag the reservation you want. You can do that all at once. Disney announced we'll be seeing the new scenes promised for Star Tours. It will be April 5th at Disney World, Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris. The new adventures will include new scenes from Star Wars' newest shows like Ahsoka, Andor, and The Mandalorian. On Tuesday, March 5th, CEO Bob Iger spoke at the Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference and highlighted the last 15 months of his time as CEO and things to come in the future. While much of what he said had previously been announced in some way, shape, or form, he did say that Disney could build 7 new lands across all of its theme parks, domestic and international, in the coming years. He also said that a Pandora-themed land could soon be coming to Disneyland and that Disneyland could be expanded by up to 50%. These would be significant expansions, but of course, this is not 100% confirmation, so it remains to be seen what will actually come to pass. No timelines were announced either, and the new lands take time, so this will be measured in multiple years. 1900 Park Fair reservations opened on March 5th. It officially opens on April 10th. Disney also released a foodie guide for the restaurant, which they normally only do for festivals. For breakfast, they'll have the bread pudding with vanilla crème anglaise, donut holes, their famous strawberry soup, assorted pastries, croissant breakfast pizza, cheese potato casserole, eggs benedict with hollandaise sauce, among many, many others. For dinner, they'll have peel and eat shrimp, Tiano's gumbo with spicy andouille sausage, which sounds amazing.
Yes, it does.
Curry roasted chicken, roasted garlic sausage, porchetta, among many others as well. We were able to get reservations for our upcoming trip, and we'll be eating dinner there on May 11th. I'm super excited to try that out.
Yeah, me too. It'll be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a heads up, folks, I've been fighting a cold now for the last, it feels like, month. So if my voice sounds a little weird, or if I sound like I'm fighting the urge to cough every 5 seconds, that's what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. Our daughter is having the exact same thing, so it's obviously going around, and it's probably just a matter of time before I get it.
Yep, I would agree. But all is well, just fighting the cold.
Yep, 100%. With that said, in today's episode, we'll be going over some do's and don'ts when planning and executing your Walt Disney World vacation. So not all Disney World trip planning advice is created equal, and I've heard people give downright wrong advice. Okay, so the purpose of today's episode is to give you some good recommendations that comes from our experience in planning and doing Walt Disney World vacations. We've been many times, and we've experienced hiccups and problems along the way, and we want to make sure that you can mitigate any issues that you might face as best as possible to give yourself the best chance at having a great vacation.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, there's some subjectivity here. What works for us may not exactly work for you. So as always, take what you like and leave the rest. We'll give you the full picture though, so that ultimately you can decide what you'd like to apply to your vacation and what may be less important to you.
Absolutely. So let's kick it off with the do. Book advanced dining reservations. We've mentioned this before on the podcast, but it bears mentioning again and again in our opinion. We can't tell you how many times we've had conversations with friends planning and asking for advice on Disney trips, and they're surprised at hearing that they should actually make reservations 60 days before their trip. They'll make statements like, really? Is that really necessary? Can't I just walk up to a restaurant? The answer is always an emphatic yes, it is necessary. If you want to dine at the most popular restaurants on property, it is 100% worth making advanced dining reservations. The more in-demand restaurants such as Cinderella's Royal Table, Storybook Dining at Artist Point, Topolino's Breakfast, 1900 Park Fair, which will be opening soon.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be a hot commodity for a little while. Oh gosh,
big time. That's returning with the high demand, like Oliver said. If you don't plan ahead, you could miss out on these entirely. You can't just walk up to these restaurants and expect to get in.
Agreed.
It's pretty hard to do. And be mindful that this won't make or break your trip, okay? But it's not because you miss out on a meal or two that your vacation is completely ruined. But that being said, it can definitely elevate your experience. And some of the meals are really enjoyable and 100% worth your time and money. We'll give you an example. If you have a young princess in your party that is absolutely smitten with the princesses, and you know her heart would melt just meeting them at Cinderella's royal table, it can be a really magical experience. We have experienced that ourselves, and it's wonderful.
The last time we were there, our daughter would just like super spin. She absolutely loved seeing all the princesses. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, Cinderella's royal table is super expensive. We fully admit to that.
Yep, 100%.
So you certainly don't have to do one every single day of your trip. But if this is your once-in-a-lifetime trip, or you may not be back for several years in between, we suggest picking 2 or 3 table service restaurants that you'd really like to experience and prioritize those at 60 days. Reminder that resort guests can book 60 days plus every day of their resort stay for up to 10 days.
Yep, absolutely. And it's definitely in your best interest. We've said that before on the podcast, but it's true. Like for those really popular restaurants, it really is worth getting up at 60 days before, especially if you're staying on property. Take advantage of that booking window and try to book it far in. So for example, if you're checking in on May 4th and you're checking out on May 11th, well, try for like May 9th or May 10th. Later on in your booking window, your odds of getting that reservation go way up.
Absolutely, I agree.
So don't expect to see and do everything there is to do in Walt Disney World in one trip,
Absolutely.
okay? So this is 100% a rookie thing. No offense to anybody. This is another thing you'll often hear people who have never been to Disney World say or expect out of their Disney trip, okay? You'll also hear things like, we'll do everything there is to see and do in Magic Kingdom. No, you won't. Okay, that's not possible. There's just too much. The parks have so much to see and do, and more broadly, Disney World is massive. Okay, there's so much to see and do across the 4 parks, Disney Springs, the resorts. It's just not possible to see and do it all in one trip. You can definitely see and do a lot. There's no doubt about that. But we've been to Disney many times, and while we experience our favorites when we go back, we always do something new that we've never done before every time we go. So what I suggest is prioritizing a few things every day. Make a list of your must-do things in a day. These can be attractions, shows, meet and greets, and similar things. If you get everything done on that list, great. If you don't, that's totally okay as well. I can guarantee that regardless of how many things you get done, the things you do experience will be wonderful. Okay, so be mindful that things change. Certain people in your party may not cooperate, or they may change their minds, and that's okay. Okay. Honestly, this is what is wonderful about Walt Disney World. You can come back and experience things you've never done before, and that's what keeps it fresh.
Absolutely. I completely agree with this. So another do is to stay on Walt Disney World property. So if it's in your budget, we highly recommend staying on Walt Disney World property. It is expensive to stay on Disney property. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
Even the value resorts will run you at least $200 a night on average.
Yeah, easy. Yep.
Yeah, easy. So you can definitely save money by staying off property in terms of total cost for accommodations. We completely get that.
Yep.
But having said that, there are several perks to staying on property, like early entry, advanced dining reservation windows, individual lightning lanes at 7 a.m. instead of park open, complimentary transportation from the resorts, free parking, extended evening hours for the deluxe guests, among others. And aside from that, there's a distinct feeling when you're on Walt Disney property. And by staying on property, you can stay immersed in that bubble for the entirety of your trip, which is something we absolutely love.
Yep.
As soon as we leave the Orlando airport and we drive into the property and we don't leave it again, we're happy.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
So now, is this worth the price tag to stay on property? Well, really, only you and your family can decide that, but you've heard us say this before. We've stayed both on and off property, and nowadays we quite simply won't stay off property. Yep. This just works best for us to stay on property, and we just love the feeling of being in the Disney bubble. It's 100% worth it to us every time.
Yeah, 100%. And like we totally get that's not for everyone, but yeah, absolutely. If you want to experience staying in the bubble, it's definitely worth doing at least once.
Oh, absolutely. At least once. Yeah.
Next, don't assume that vacation packages are always the best bang for your buck. Okay, so Disney offers vacation packages, and these can be enticing because it's easier to book everything all at once. And it can be cost effective to do it this way because you only have to put down a $200 deposit and then pay some off as you go leading up to your trip. And that way your tickets, your hotel stay can be paid off before you ever leave home. Okay, so I totally get the appeal of that. Having said that, this isn't always the best use of your hard-earned dollars, and here's why. Disney will sometimes have specific deals on tickets or specific hotel discounts that you can book by booking these directly. So we've saved thousands of dollars over the years with room-only savings that we've been able to take advantage of. Granted, we're annual pass holders, so packages don't really apply to us. But even with that aside, it's worth looking at the special offers tab on the Disney website and compare overall totals to see where the best savings will be. An easy way to do this as well is to avoid having to worry about this yourself. And that's just to use a Disney travel agent. Okay, so they can look into this for you and monitor for special offers and see if those can be applied to your vacation. That's certainly an option. But if you're like me, you like to keep control yourself, and you can do this yourself as well. Okay, you just have to remind yourself essentially to check the website and every now and again. Another thing to keep in mind as well is Disney uses specific language when deals are released. So for example, you could see a 5-night stay and save this much on your room only reservation. But when you look at the details, this applies to stays of less than 5 nights as well. So while it's not misleading per se, it's worth looking at the offer. If it seems to insinuate a certain length of time, it may apply to a shorter stay as well.
Yeah, that's a good tip for sure. Another do is set realistic expectations for your days in Disney. And what this boils down to is expect things to go wrong. We know how much time, money, and effort that goes into planning this vacation. And when you're visiting a place referred to as the most magical place on earth, it can be hard to not have that sky-high expectations when you get ready to go for your day.
Agreed. Yep.
Like it's very understandable.
Yep. And we've been there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with our kids.
Yep.
But it is super important to manage your expectations so that you're not disappointed. And this isn't doom and gloom. It will definitely be magical, and there will be lots of magical moments, we promise.
Yep.
But your family is still your family. Your kids will still be your kids at Disney. Rides are going to shut down unexpectedly. Inclement weather could cause temporary closures of attractions and transportation, such as the Skyliner.
Yep.
Things can and will go wrong in Disney. Even though it is the most magical place on earth, it's just understandable that things will go wrong.
It's going to happen. You're better off preparing for that mentally than trying to, have
it be perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if your kids throw a tantrum, or you rope drop Rise of the Resistance to find out it's not actually opening on time and will be delayed, or your day gets completely rained out with a torrential downpour all day long, don't let that defeat you. These things happen in Disney just like they do anywhere else. And if you're prepared for that and can pivot when you need to, you're much less likely to be disappointed with your day or your trip as a whole.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. Managing expectations is huge here.
We've had to learn that.
Yeah, 100%. Take it from us, right? Our first trip, we had, just the highest expectations, and don't get us wrong, it 100% met those expectations. That's why we fell in love with it, and we keep going back, and we go back all the time. But having said that, some things went wrong, right? It wasn't perfect. But again, you just got to roll with the punches, and you're going to be much better off for it.
I agree.
Next, don't travel during holidays or extremely busy times if you can avoid it. Okay, so we realize this is not a possibility for everyone, and sometimes you have no choice but to travel at the very busiest times. But if you have the flexibility to travel around these dates, then definitely do that to avoid massive crowds. So examples of busiest times are Christmas and New Year's, Thanksgiving, March break and Easter, and large events like Run Disney events will all draw massive crowds that can really feel overwhelming. If you're forced to travel during these times, you can certainly have a nice vacation, and there's ways to manage the crowds to maximize your time as best you can. But the best strategy to beat the crowds at Disney is to be there when it's less crowded. It's just that simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
So end of spring break season before the summer rush. So that's like end of April, early May, end of August into the start of September when students go back to school. There's a sweet spot after Thanksgiving before the Christmas rush. Certain days and weeks in January and February outside of special events like New Year's and Run Disney are all great times where you'll find lower crowds than the busiest time at Disney. Okay. So a thing to know here is that Disney will not be dead. It's not going to be super quiet. It's always some kind of busy at Disney, but for example, end of April, early May, you're definitely going to feel a difference in crowd levels than if you're going Thanksgiving weekend. That's guaranteed.
Agreed.
So long story short, during these times, you'll quite simply be dealing with less crowds, right? So which is a huge factor in deciding when to go for most people. So if that's you, keep that in mind.
Do be aware of extra costs. The costs that add up that you may not factor in can easily add up. So the more aware you are of these going in, the better prepared you'll be in terms of budgeting for these things, and maybe you can avoid them altogether. Some examples of this is parking. If you're staying off property and you'll be driving into the parks every day, the cost of parking is $30 a day.
Yep.
Add that to 4 or 5 park days, and you're talking an extra $120 to $150.
Yep, significant cost.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're staying at certain resorts, these charge a daily resort fee that can range from modest to pretty expensive. So do your research so that these don't catch you by surprise if you're checking out. Swan and Dolphin and Swan Reserve charge resort fees on top of the room fee. So make sure you are well aware of these. And another thing to be mindful of is cancellation windows. So for example, if you don't cancel a dining reservation within 2 hours, and some are longer, like Cinderella's Royal Table, which is actually 24 hours, hours.
Yeah, 100%. And you pay for that in advance too. So if you cancel within 24 hours, you're out that entire total.
That one is key.
Yep, that one would sting.
Yeah. Oh gosh, absolutely. You'll be charged a $10 fee per person, or sometimes the entire cost of the meal, such as the Cinderella's Royal Table, like we just mentioned. So again, just be aware and be prepared. Like we said, it's expensive to go to Disney, so knowing how much to budget for, even for these less obvious items, can really add up and is important.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be mindful of those for sure. Next, don't set and forget. So what I mean when I say this is there's a lot that goes into planning a Disney vacation, okay? And once you've booked your hotel and your tickets and you feel like you have a handle on your itinerary, you should still be monitoring Disney news and anything new that's changing. So we spoke earlier about discounts. So there's that aspect, but beyond that, there's other things to be mindful of. So for example, since the launch of Genie Plus, there have been many changes over that span, and it's now radically different than it was when it first started out. So it's important to keep your ear to the ground and be aware of significant changes that could impact your trip. Pool closures, attraction refurbishments, Skyliner maintenance are also example of things that could impact your trip or your resort stay. Okay, so attractions will sometimes go down for short or long refurbs, but if an attraction you're really wanting to ride is down during your visit, you may want to move things around. Okay, so keep that in mind. The Skyliner usually goes down for a couple weeks in January every year. So if you're staying at a Skyliner resort specifically for that reason, you may want to switch resorts or dates. Long story short, things are constantly changing at Disney, and things could be very different from when you booked or when you visited last. So it's definitely worth keeping in the loop so that you're aware of any changes and you don't have any nasty surprises when you arrive on property.
Do take the time to familiarize yourself with the My Disney Experience app. This app is actually great and is such a useful tool to help plan your vacation and navigate the resort as a whole when you're on property. You can book dining, make mobile orders, check your countdown for your stay, link your tickets, chat with cast members, access your ride and PhotoPass photos, monitor all your future plans, join virtual queues, make lightning lane selections, purchase individual lightning lanes, check ride wait times, which we happen to do often when we're sitting back at home.
100%.
Check bus arrival times for your resort, locate your car in the parking lots. That's a handy one.
Yep.
Among many other useful features.
Yeah, 100%. It's a gold mine.
Personally, we love this app and we use it constantly leading up to and during our trip.
Yep, 100%.
The more familiar you are with the app before you arrive, the better off you'll be once you're on property. Once you grasp where everything is located and how it works, it certainly makes navigating the parks that much easier.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. The app also gets frequent updates, so similar to our last point, it's good to check in with the app every now and again to make sure that you know what features are available and how to use them and aware of any changes.
Yeah, 100%. Like we just said in our news, right? There is a significant change in the last week here, so it looks completely different. Yeah. So if you've gotten used to it and...
We noticed it right away.
Yeah, 100% as soon as we open it, right? So just something to keep in mind there for sure.
Agreed.
Next, don't overbook or overplan every single aspect of the day. Okay, so I have to take my own advice sometimes because if you're a meticulous planner, it can certainly be hard not to overplan, but it's important to leave room for spontaneity. Okay, so if you just spend your entire day rushing from one attraction to another and you never stop and enjoy and take the time to really appreciate where you are, you're missing out on one of the best parts of being on Disney property. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with grabbing an ice cream, sitting down somewhere along the hub and people watching. You may catch a cast member making art with broom and water, drawing Disney characters. You'll see squares with tape on the ground where people, when they walk through it, cast members will like cheer and clap.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, and there's so much little Disney magic going on in the parks at any given time. Okay, so if you don't stop and enjoy the atmosphere throughout your trip, you could miss it entirely. So it's important to have a plan and a general itinerary of the attractions you want to check out during the day, but it's also important to stop, look around and enjoy where you are. It's usually the culmination of months, if not years of planning. So take the time to enjoy and savor it 100%.
Do take the time to enjoy your resort. If you're staying on Disney property, the resorts have so much to offer in terms of pools, dining, and other activities. So make sure you're taking full advantage of those. Again, it kind of goes back to what we were saying. If you're going to do rope drop to fireworks and then crumble into your bed as soon as you get back to your room, it kind of defeats the purpose of staying at a Disney resort. Yeah. Well, not really, because you still get all the perks and whatnot, but there's a lot going on at the resorts.
Yeah,
the resorts have phenomenal pools. Every single one of them does. And it's always nice to go for a swim in these or either lounge by the pool with a drink, let the kids burn off some energy by having a swim. Many parents who have been to Disney know the pain of wanting to spend a bit more time in the parks to get their money's worth just to have their kids complain that all they want to do is go back to the resort and swim. We get that 100% and we feel your pain. But at the same time, there's part of the reason you likely decided to stay on property, and that's to have that quick access to your resort to do things like go for a swim.
Yep, 100%.
A lot of other activities also happen on your resort, such as movies under the stars, where they play Disney movies on the resort grounds, which is very cool.
Yep.
Many resorts will have resort-specific activities as well. It's completely worth checking out before your trip so that you can take advantage of these things while you're on property.
Yeah, 100%. And like the kids going back for a swim thing, like we experienced that like from day one, right?
Yeah.
Like the pools are so awesome. Like for example, last time we stayed at the Polynesian, and if you've ever seen the pool there, it's pretty great, right? It overlooks the Seven Seas Lagoon and the castle, and there's a big slide, and it's awesome. And the kids like were wanting to go back to swim, right? And you're like, oh, but we spent thousands of dollars for these parks, right?
It's the experience in general, the entire experience that's worth it. Yeah.
And like part of the reason we stayed at the Poly was that we could hop on the monorail, go back to the resort, and then, you know, head back into the park. So just remember that. Yeah. Take advantage of your resort is a big one. Okay. Next, don't eat a bad meal. Research your food options is what it boils down to. So there's bad food in Disney. Of course there is. Having said that, there's no reason for you to eat that food. Okay. There's enough content creators out there and enough content to fill a lifetime of watching YouTube videos, reels, reading articles, and blog posts. Okay. So a little research goes a long way when it comes to dining. And the more you know coming in, the less likely you are to be disappointed by a meal you didn't enjoy. Okay. So food is expensive in the parks. And so you want to spend your money on snacks and meals that you're at least very likely to enjoy. You may not love everything you try, but if you dip into the first quick service place you see and order whatever, you could be really disappointed. So if you have a general idea of the quick service locations on property and what they offer, as well as the snack locations and a little list of the snacks you'd like to prioritize, you're much more likely to have a good dining experience in the parks. Okay. So we have our go-to favorites that we know we love, and we have a list of new items of things that we haven't tried yet. So we have a general idea of what we'd like to eat when we're in the parks.
Yeah, absolutely. We create a list on our computer, then we send it to our phones, and we can kind of always refer back to that list once we get into the parks that are, because the lists are on our phone, and it works perfectly that way.
100%. And like it's easy to forget otherwise.
Oh,
too,
absolutely.
Right? So,
creating a little list is perfect.
Yep, absolutely.
Do wake up early. The old adage, the early bird gets the worm, is 100% accurate, and there are a few benefits to pulling you and your family out of bed early while you're in Disney.
Agreed, yep.
We realize that this sounds very unappealing to some of you, but hear us out.
Yep.
In Walt Disney World, if you purchase Genie Plus, you can make your first Lightning Lane selection at 7 a.m. And this is also the time when you can join the virtual queues for Tron at Magic Kingdom and Guardians of the Galaxy at Epcot. Plus, if you're staying on property, 7 a.m. is also when you can purchase individual Lightning Lane selections. So at the very least, you need to be up a little bit before 7 to be ready to book some of these things.
Or all of these things.
Or all of these things, yeah. Another benefit is rope drop. That's a big benefit.
Yep, 100%.
If you're not familiar with the term, it is essentially meaning that you can head into the park before it opens, so that when it rope drops, meaning the park opens, you are some of the first people to enter the park.
Yep.
It's a very exciting time.
It is, yep.
And depending on where you are, there may be a physical rope that will drop at opening. So for example, if you're with the crowd at Fantasyland for early entry at Magic Kingdom, there is a physical rope there to keep guests in check before they remove it, and you're allowed to go into Fantasyland to start riding attractions. If you're near the front of the masses in the morning, you can have a serious head start to your day, and that'll be a huge advantage for you. We are 100% a rope drop family, and we always get so much done in the first couple hours of the day. Our kids are morning kids, and so we tend to go hard in the morning, chill in the afternoon.
Yep, agreed, 100%. We can't emphasize this enough. Like when you go early, and the example, like the Magic Kingdom example is perfect. So if you go first thing at rope drop and you're near the front of the masses for Fantasyland, you can get on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train pretty quickly and then book it right to Peter Pan. Those are two rides that have huge waits usually throughout the day. Like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train rarely dips less than an hour.
Rarely.
Peter Pan usually is hovering around, 60, 70, 80 minutes. So if you get those two done in the first half hour, like that's a win. It's a win every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I agree.
So next up, don't feel obligated to buy Genie Plus and or individual Lightning Lanes. Okay, so purchasing Genie Plus or individual Lightning Lanes is not necessary to have a wonderful park day. This is especially true at less busy times, or if you go to the parks early, like we were just saying. So if you prioritize rides properly and you're able to get a couple off your must-do attractions early in the day, you may not need Genie Plus at all. A reminder that aside from rides that have virtual queues, so Tron and Guardians of the Galaxy, you can wait in the standby queue for any other ride on Disney property. So as long as you packed your patient pants, you'll get to ride those attractions at some point during the day. So don't feel obligated to purchase these. It's definitely not a necessity. definitely more of a nice to have. Okay, so you can also purchase it for some days, but not all days. So for example, if you were doing 2 Magic Kingdom days, well, you could purchase it for the first day and not for the second. You could prioritize shows or just hitting those attractions that you really want to do a second time on your second day. Long story short, don't feel pressure to buy these in any way. Do what's right for you and your family.
Absolutely. We hardly ever purchase Disney Genie Plus for Animal Kingdom.
Yep. It's just not necessary in our opinion. It's not necessary
for us. We know what to do in the mornings at rope drop.
Yep. Typically, we'll rope drop Flight of Passage. So we get that one done first thing in the morning. We zip over to Navi River Journey right beside, and then we head over to Kilimanjaro Safaris. We have 3 of our
big
favorites.
Hitters, yeah.
And they're big hitters done in, the first hour of parks. And then we can kind of take it easy. Usually then we head over to Expedition Everest. The wait is still pretty low early in the morning.
Or so, yeah.
So we usually are able to do that one back to back, then make our way over to Dinosaur, and that's kind of how we structure our day. But long story short, it's not necessary because you structure your day in a certain way and you can do all the things without having to make that extra purchase. So why wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely. I completely agree. Do bring comfortable shoes that are broken in if they need to be.
Yep.
This is a hot topic and one that we get asked pretty frequently and one that gets talked about a lot on social media as well. And at the end of the day, I think people tend to worry about this a little too much, but to keep it super simple, the best shoes to bring to the parks are the ones that you are very comfortable wearing all day long.
Yep, 100%. And that might seem like common sense, but it's really worth mentioning.
Absolutely. These usually aren't the cutest shoes or your favorites, and they may not be the most fashionable, but trust us when we say you will thank yourself for prioritizing comfort over looks in this situation.
Agreed 100% every single time. Yep.
Whatever you choose, whether it's a good pair of supportive sandals or comfortable sneakers you can go all day in, it doesn't really matter. Generally speaking, it's definitely advantageous to have something that will dry fast because it's hot and humid in the parks, and it tends to rain a lot.
Always, yep.
And especially in the summer and especially in the afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. My personal favorite are the Adidas Ultra Boost DNAs. They're not cheap, but I've owned several pairs of these in recent years. I've done 18-hour days, 30,000 plus steps, 15 miles or more in them many times over, and I've had no issues whatsoever. I bring 2 pairs with me in case one gets completely drenched, and that's all I need.
I swear by the Skechers with memory foam soles. I can go all day in these, no problem. When it comes to our kids, they're obviously not as articulate about what they need for shoes, but don't buy shoes and wait for them to wear them on the first day of the parks. What we normally do is we have our kids wear them throughout the house about a month or so leading up to our trip. And it seems to work.
Yeah, or just wear them at the park a few times, right? So spend some hours in them playing, being active so that they know that they can be comfortable in them and they're not going to get little blisters.
Absolutely. We know that you may want to have cute and clean shoes, but if you want to get the most mileage for your littles with minimal complaining, really, then a good pair of broken-in sneakers that they've had a chance to run around in and feel comfortable wearing for extended periods of activity is by far your safest bet.
Yep, agreed 100%. Next up, don't ride the first ride you see. Okay,
oh my gosh, yes.
I actually think for the most part, but I actually think for the most part, people know which rides to prioritize early morning when they're arriving at the park. But inevitably, you'll see people getting in line for Spaceship Earth, walking into Epcot because it's the first thing you come across when you enter the front entrance. Okay, so this is either park veterans who don't worry about the busier rides, or it's people who came in without a plan, so they queue at the very first thing. So let me preface this by saying there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, if this is a conscious decision that you're at peace with, then more power to you. But if you're unsure and you're only getting in line because you kind of feel lost, I beg of you, just spend a little time researching the attractions available in each park so that you can prioritize your day to wait as little as possible. So if you arrived early but squandered your early entry time getting in line for rides that usually have little to no wait throughout the day, it's definitely not the best use of your time. The more time you spend in queues, the less time you have for everything else, including relaxing in the later half of the day because you've already done everything you set out to. So in short, if you want to get in the queue for the first thing you see because that's your plan, then great. If not, research.
Absolutely. Do factor in travel time. In case you're not aware, or if you normally travel to Disneyland or you went to Universal Orlando before you came to Walt Disney World, it is massive. While in Disneyland and Universal, you can walk from park to park really easily, but that's not the case for Walt Disney World. It is massive, the size of the city of San Francisco, and it takes time to get from place to place.
It just does, 100%.
Some resorts, like the Magic Kingdom area resorts and the Epcot area resorts, are closer to those parks, but for the most part, you're facing some travel time to get to and from the parks. To park hop, you can't walk from park to park with the small caveat, of course, that you can technically walk from Epcot to Hollywood Studios and vice versa, but it's still not close.
Not close, nope.
It's not like walking from Disneyland to California Adventure. It's actually a trek, and it's going to take you some time.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're already logging 10,000, 15,000 steps, you may not want to do that.
No, I agree, yeah. You're probably better off to take the boats or Skyliner to save your feet, since you're probably already doing quite a lot of walking within the parks.
Yep.
So moral of the story, it takes time to get around Walt Disney World. And if you need to get someplace specific, like a resort for a dining reservation, for example, make sure you're giving yourself plenty of time to get there. Disney generally suggests an hour, and it's definitely not a bad idea. Yep. We follow that rule.
Yeah, agreed 100%. It's better to be a little bit early and just, kind of check out the shops or kill a little bit of time. Then,
we love doing that. Actually, it's fun.
100%. Than trying to,
go and check out their pools.
Exactly. If you try to make it there exactly on the nose, that's a recipe
it's not a fun way to start your reservation.
Yeah, agreed. Next up, don't eat at table service restaurants for every meal. So in principle, it's a good idea not to eat at more than one table service restaurant per day. So the reason I say this is because, one, table service restaurants are more expensive the vast majority of the time.
Yes.
Okay, so that can add up. And then two, they take time. So you're paying a lot of money for your time in Disney, and a table service restaurant can take an hour or more very easily.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of restaurant time in a day if you're doing more than one. We suggest making no more than one per day. That's a good base because it does give you a good break, usually in the AC, getting off your feet for a while and replenishing with a cool beverage and some food. But you don't necessarily want to be doing that multiple times a day, something to keep in mind. Sometimes the best thing to do is grab a quick service meal or snack on the go, or just sit down with just enough time to eat and drink something before you move on to the next thing.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Do eat at a lounge instead of the full-blown service restaurant. So kind of on the same topic here. A good way to experience some menu items from a restaurant you really want to eat at is to eat at the lounge.
Yep, agreed.
This is an advantage because, one, most don't require an advanced dining reservation, so you don't have to worry about that. And two, they have some of the same menu items from the main restaurant. And three, it can be less expensive overall, so there's a lot of good reasons to eat at a lounge. A really good example of this is the Hollywood Brown Derby Lounge at Hollywood Studios. You can still have the famous Cobb salad at the lounge. They are very famous for that. Yep. We've had it. It's good.
Yep.
And you don't have to worry about an advanced dining reservation.
Yep.
Also, the Space 220 Lounge is a good use of your time and money. While this is one that does require an advanced dining reservation, it's a lot less expensive because you're not tied to the pre-fixed menu. You can order a la carte items so that you can sit in the restaurant and have that experience of going up in the elevator and sitting up there, but you're saving some money.
Yeah, 100%. Next up, don't forget about ride switch and single rider. So these are a couple of things that you can do to make your life easier when you're in the park. So rider switch is pretty simple. If you have someone in your party who can't or won't ride an attraction, let's say you have a little is too small to ride Space Mountain, for example, you and your party check in with a cast member at the front of the attraction. The non-rider and another guest will wait while the others enter the standby queue. When the ones that rode exit, the guests who waited with the non-rider can enter the lightning lane queue to experience the attraction. They can also take another person with them so they don't ride alone. So someone or multiple people in practice could get to ride it twice. So an example of this is, let's say you have a family of 5 and you have mom and the 2 older kids enter the queue for Space Mountain while dad and the younger child wait outside.
Yep.
When mom and the 2 older child come out, dad can take another person, so he can take one of the children, but oftentimes cast members will let that second child go with dad, right? Because they're just doing that basically out of the goodness of their hearts.
Especially if you treat them well, they're going to treat you well.
100%. They're in the business of making good days, right? So
especially for kids.
In practice, they'll do that a lot. We've seen that happen quite a lot.
I agree, yeah.
Single rider is exactly what it sounds like. Certain attractions like Test Track have a single rider queue, okay? So you'll be added to ride vehicles that have empty seats essentially is what happens. So note, your party will be broken up, so no riding together. If you don't mind partying with your party, it can be a good way to save time without worrying about lighting lanes.
I agree. Do utilize mobile order. We've said this on the podcast before, but every trip, without fail, we are always seeing people waiting in line at quick service locations that offer mobile order that have return windows available right now. Meaning if those people open their My Disney Experience app and place their order, they would probably get their food faster than waiting in the line that they are currently in.
100%.
While they are hanging out watching their phones.
Yep, 100%.
But hey, we're not one to scold anybody while they're waiting in line. And if that's what they want to do, again, that's their business. And maybe it's because they don't know. We just kind of feel bad for them when we see that.
Absolutely. Yep.
That won't be you, though, because you're listening to this podcast right now. And you know, to save time, you can mobile order at restaurants that offer it and that you don't have to wait in line.
Yep.
And if return times are not available, then you can get in line or you can place an order, go do something else, and then come back and eat. Either way, it's a win-win in my books.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. Let's say you're at Sleepy Hollow and you want to order one of those Nutella sandwiches and you can see that the lineup is crazy and they don't have availability right now for mobile order. Well, place your order for whatever it is, like half an hour or an hour from now, go do something else and then come back and pick up your order a little bit. Like that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're maximizing your time that way. So you're not, stuck in the queue. You're actually doing something else while you're waiting.
Agreed.
Next up, don't get in the first line you see. Move to the left or right, depending where the masses are arriving from. Okay, so this is kind of related to the earlier point, but this happens constantly at park entrances, for security lines, in the parks, at quick service locations. People will enter the queue that is closest to them when there are queues literally right beside them with significantly less people. Okay, so just a little to the left or right. Don't be those people. Just keep on walking. And again, you'll save yourself some precious time. Why wait any longer than you have to? You already wait in so many queues during your Disney vacation. So you may as well take every chance you get to wait in less of a line.
Completely agree. Do take breaks during the day. So this is kind of related to the earlier point of enjoying your resort. But if you are in the park for early entry and you intend to be in the park for fireworks, that is a very long day,
Seriously,
especially with kids.
Yep.
So if it's not your first park day of your trip, or if you have little ones tagging along, we really highly suggest taking breaks.
Yep.
Even if you don't do a long day like that or in several days in a row, it can be very exhausting. So don't be afraid to do the midday break. When we have our kids, we like to take them back to the resorts, have a swim, and then head back into the parks a little after. Or if it's just the two of us, we might like to make a lunch reservation out of the parks, the Magic Kingdom area resorts, or the last trip we did, we made a late lunch reservation at Sanaa, which was absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
And we were really refreshed for the evening because we actually did Jollywood Nights that night.
Yep.
So we were super thankful for the break.
Yeah,
so don't feel like you have to spend every waking hour in the parks. Breaks can truly make the world of difference.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's one of my favorite things to do, is just to take a midday break when the parks are busiest, they're at their hottest. You just want to get off your feet for a little bit, go outside the parks, have lunch, and then come back refreshed to tackle the afternoon.
Completely agree.
Next up, don't pay for water. Okay, so water bottles in the parks are expensive. Even if you're an annual pass holder or a DVC member and you purchase them at retail locations with a bit of a discount, it's still several times more expensive than it would be outside of the Disney bubble. So we suggest bringing in a refillable water bottle. We like the collapsible ones that fold pretty small. There are several water bottle refill stations in the parks, and previously you kind of had to research where they were and remember it, or make a list so that you knew where they were. But Disney very recently made a change to the My Disney Experience app, and now if you type in water bottle refill stations into the app, you can pull up refill stations anywhere on property, which is awesome and a great new addition.
Oh, I agree. I thought that was wonderful.
And this goes back to what we were saying earlier, be, on top of the app, because they'll add things like this, these little quality of life things that really can make a difference. So aside from that, you can always ask for a cup of ice water at any quick service location in the parks. Oftentimes they'll have cups of ice water ready to go and they'll hand over however many you need. And you don't need to actually buy anything for this. Disney doesn't want you collapsing in the parks, okay? One of my favorite spots to stop right now for a quick drink is Casey's Corner in Magic Kingdom. So they have several large cooler just outside with cups stacked next to them. Good place to stop for some colder water.
It's like the perfect spot.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
Do prepare to walk a lot.
Yep.
We can guarantee you that you will walk a lot more than you think you're actually going to walk.
Yep.
People will often walk 10,000 steps on the very low end and upwards to 30,000 steps on the higher end, anywhere from 6 to 16 miles on average. So remember what we were saying earlier about comfy shoes? Well, the parks are not small and you will be walking all over the place. So you don't want to be in high heels walking around the parks.
Not. God, that sounds awful.
And I have seen lots of ladies doing that. Whatever. Also, if you're utilizing Genie Plus, you'll inevitably be walking a lot more.
Yep,
and the reason we say this is because you're not walking the parks in this systematic fashion, meaning you typically won't start in Tomorrowland and do all the rides there and then do Fantasyland, Liberty Square, and so forth. You're actually going to start somewhere like Space Mountain in Tomorrowland, and then all of a sudden you have this lightning lane for Big Thunder on the complete opposite end of the park.
Agreed.
So then you're going to head back to Tomorrowland for your virtual queue for Tron, then you're inevitably going to end up walking a lot more.
Yeah,
just
100%.
back and forth, back and forth.
Like if you were to like have a tracking of your steps throughout the day in a park. It would literally be like a star zigzagging all over. Yeah.
So the good news is that if you're wearing a fitness tracker like the Apple Watch, Garmin, Fitbit, or whatever, you're going to crush your step goals and then some.
Yeah, guaranteed. Absolutely. Every time. Next up, don't do your shopping until the very end of the day. So for the most part, it's in your best interest to save your shopping until you're on your way out of the parks.
Couldn't agree more with this.
This way, you don't have to drag around your purchases with you during the day and bring them on the attractions with you. Plus, if you buy something fragile like a Disney mug, which we love to do, you don't want it breaking while you're carrying it all over the parks throughout the day. So if you save that for when you're on your way out, well, you only have to carry it to your car or your transportation back to your resort. Easy peasy. Now, there is a caveat to this, okay? So if you're wanting to buy an in-demand item that could sell out, think limited edition releases, then by all means, grab it as soon as possible and lug it around with you, okay? So you don't want to miss out, and we get that. But if it's a more generic item and there's plenty of, and you've seen them on multiple shots across Disney property, save it for your way out and you'll be better off for it.
Yeah, 100%. So do prepare for the rain.
Yep.
It will most certainly rain at some point during your vacation, and it may rain every single day.
Yep.
Trust us, you want to be prepared for the rain versus hoping it just doesn't come.
Yeah, 100%.
We've never been on a Walt Disney World trip where it hasn't rained at least once. And even if it's not calling for rain, we can't tell you how many times the forecasts look clear, only for there to be a major downpour in the afternoon.
Yep, agreed.
So whatever you want to pack to help you keep dry, just make sure you bring it with you, whether that be a rain jacket that folds small, a poncho, or an umbrella, whatever works for you and your family. So be mindful that most umbrellas will set off the sensors when you go through security. So we highly recommend taking it out of your park bag and holding it out in front of you while you walk in.
Yep, 100%.
We've seen many people do that.
Agreed, yeah.
And actually, they will suggest that you do that too.
Yeah.
We would actually say that that's probably the biggest downfall of the umbrella. So we personally prefer to pack ponchos.
Yep.
They fold nicely, they're slim, and they never leave our park bag unless it's going to rain, really. They just stay there.
Yep.
Now, obviously, you can hunker down somewhere when it rains and avoid it altogether, but it could end up raining all day or rain just enough for it to be annoying, but not enough to stop you from walking around.
Yep.
This is where sandals and or quick dry shoes come in handy because it's not necessarily the rain that's going to make your feet wet, but walking the Disney World after a rainstorm, your feet will get wet for sure. The splashing of the puddles, all that.
Agreed, 100%. Next up, don't miss the nighttime spectaculars. So I don't necessarily think this happens a lot. I think many travel parties look forward to the nighttime spectaculars. So whether that's Happily Ever After at Magic Kingdom, the new Luminous show at Epcot, or Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios. But if you're on the fence about staying late to watch the shows, I strongly recommend that you do that. If you have to go off property for a little while to get refreshed enough to do that, then do it. The nighttime spectaculars are so worth it, in my opinion. The shows are phenomenal. Happily Ever After hits right in the fields, and so does Fantasmic. We haven't seen Luminous yet, but Harmonious during the 50th was such a good show, and I fully anticipate that we'll love Luminous as well. Okay, I've not seen many Disney nighttime spectaculars that haven't wowed me. Epcot Forever was a little lackluster, but still a good show. If this is your once in a lifetime trip or you don't get there very often, it's 100% worth it. If you're in the parks all the time, you may not do it every time, and we get that, but that's not most people, okay? So it's definitely worth staying or coming back for most travel parties.
So last but certainly not least, do the extras, the meet and greets, the parades, the show in front of Cinderella's castle, the impromptu performances by the Dapper Dans at Magic Kingdom, the Jammers at Epcot, Divine at Animal Kingdom. These are things that set Disney apart from your run-of-the-mill theme park. It's the Disney magic, and it's part of the intangible that makes it all worth it. We love meeting Mickey to this day. The parades bring us so much joy, and our kids absolutely love it.
Yep, absolutely. You couldn't agree more, right? Those are the things that make it worth it.
It's the little moments.
Yeah, 100%. So definitely take advantage of those and make sure you're checking those out.
Yeah.
So having said all that, these are some of the best practices that have worked for us and that we've refined during many trips over several years. Okay, so some of these will resonate with you. Others may not, and that's completely okay. Like we always say, we don't want to tell you exactly how to vacation at Disney, but what we do want to do is give you plenty of information so that you can make informed decision on what's right for you and your travel party.
Thank you so much for joining us today to talk Disney.
If you haven't already, find us on Instagram at letsgo.to-disney for more tips and Disney fun. We're also on Facebook. Our page there is Let's Go to Disney. Also, if you're not subscribed to the podcast, we'd sure appreciate it if you took the time to do that.
And if you can find the time to drop us a rating and a review, it would be greatly appreciated. It helps us reach more listeners, and that's why we started this podcast. It's to help people have great Disney vacations.
Agreed. Have a great day, and we'll see you real soon.